You have been betrayed. You have been underestimated. Your empathy, the very quality you were told was a strength, has been used as a weapon against you. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your sincerity for naivety, and in the quiet aftermath of that wound, you are left with a single burning question. How can a world so full of wolves reward the sheep for being gentle? It cannot, and it will not. That is a lie you must unlearn, starting now. You live in an age that worships at the altar of sensitivity. You are told to be vulnerable, to feel deeply, to connect with the suffering of others as if it were your own. This, they say, is the pinnacle of human development, a noble and enlightened state of being. But this nobility is a cage. This empathy, when ungoverned, is a prison of the mind. The sensitive soul is a ship with no hull, sailing in a sea of sharks. It takes on the water of every passing storm, every criticism, every slight, every act of disloyalty. Its stability is not its own. It is outsourced to the whims of others, to the currents of social approval, to the unpredictable weather of human emotion. You have been taught that to feel everything is to be alive, but in the unforgiving realm of power and strategy, to feel everything is to be a perpetual victim. Your mind becomes a public square, where any passing opinion can erect a statue or tear one down. Your peace is held hostage by the words of your enemies, and, even more dangerously, by the expectations of your friends. You are psychologically permeable. A stray comment ruins your day. A minor betrayal feels like a declaration of war on your very soul. You react, you absorb, you suffer, and in your suffering, you believe you are righteous. But in the calculus of power, righteousness is a currency with no value. The world does not reward the mind that breaks under pressure. It is ruled by the mind that applies it. This prison of sensitivity is built on a single, fatal flaw in reasoning: the belief that the world should operate according to your moral code. You expect fairness from the unfair, loyalty from the opportunistic, and truth from those who profit from deception. You are playing chess as if it were a game of chance, and you are perpetually surprised when your opponent's calculated moves defeat your hopeful prayers. This is not living. This is a slow and agonizing surrender of your own sovereignty. But what if this entire framework is a lie? What if the path to psychological invincibility is not through feeling more, but through understanding more and feeling less? What if the key is not to open your heart to the world, but to dissect its cold, mechanical heart with the precision of a surgeon? This is the gateway to the philosophy of Machiavelli. He is not a moralist, he is a physician of power. He does not offer you comfort for your wounds, he offers you a scalpel to remove the diseased tissue of idealism that caused them. He teaches that the first and most crucial step towards building an unconquerable mind is to see humanity not as it should be, but as it is. In his own words, there is such a gap between how one lives and how one ought to live that anyone who ignores reality in favor of an ideal will soon discover he has learned how to ruin himself, not how to preserve himself. This is not a call to evil, it is a call to reality. The foundation of true strength is the courage to look upon the unvarnished facts of human nature without flinching. This brings us to the first and most fundamental of the 5 cold-blooded tactics for psychological invincibility. Tactic 1. You must become an anatomist of human nature. Think of the anatomist in a cold, stone-walled laboratory. Before him lies a body. He does not weep for it. He does not judge its past sins or virtues. He feels no personal connection to its fate. His purpose is singular: to understand its structure, its systems, its points of failure, and its mechanics of operation. With a steady hand, he cuts through skin and muscle, not out of malice, but out of a clinical desire for knowledge. He traces the pathways of nerves and arteries, identifying the hidden engines that drive the machine. This must be your approach to the human soul. You must stop being a participant in the messy, emotional drama of human affairs and become a detached, analytical observer. You must learn to see the people around you, your colleagues, your rivals, your friends, even yourself, as complex systems driven by a predictable set of inputs. What are these inputs? Machiavelli identifies them with brutal clarity: fear, greed, vanity, ambition, and above all, relentless self-interest. Men, he warns, are ungrateful, fickle liars and deceivers, fearful of danger and greedy for gain. To the sensitive mind, This is a horrifying condemnation. To the anatomist, it is simply a diagnosis. It is the operating manual for the human machine. When you adopt this perspective, the world transforms. A colleague's sudden betrayal is no longer a shocking wound that cripples your trust. It is the predictable result of his ambition clashing with your own. You can trace the anatomy of his decision back to his insecurities and desires. You are not hurt, you are informed. An insult from a rival is no longer a personal attack that damages your self-worth. It is a tactical maneuver designed to provoke a reaction. You can dissect its purpose. Is it born of envy, of fear, of a calculated attempt to unbalance you? You are not angered, you are educated. The flattery of a subordinate is not a reason for pride. It is a tool they are using to seek advantage. You do not absorb the praise, you analyze the motive. This clinical detachment is the bedrock of invincibility. It creates a space between an event and your reaction to it. In that space lies power. The power to choose your response, or to not respond at all. The power to act based on cold strategy, not hot emotion. The sensitive mind is a slave to the actions of others. The anatomist's mind is a master of its own, because it understands the mechanics that drive everyone else. It is the difference between being a pawn on the board, moved by unseen hands, and being the player who sees the entire game. This is the first freedom. The freedom from surprise, the freedom from taking things personally. It is the cold, liberating realization that the world is a machine and you finally have the schematic. The love of others is a bond of obligation, which, because men are wicked, is broken at every opportunity for their own advantage. But fear is held by a dread of punishment which never fails. Comment, "The world is as it is," to affirm this first truth, and subscribe for the lessons that follow. For to see the world clearly is the first step. To dominate it is the next. You have become the anatomist. The chaos of human interaction, which once felt like an emotional tempest, is now laid bare before you as a predictable mechanism of cause and effect. You possess the schematic of the human soul, but knowledge without action is the pastime of the philosopher, not the practice of the prince. A map is useless to the man who refuses to take a step. To possess the blueprint of the world's machinery is one thing. To build an impregnable fortress for your own mind amidst its grinding gears is another entirely. This is where observation must transform into architecture. You do not merely study the weaknesses in others. You must now turn the anatomist's scalpel upon yourself. The world outside can only wound you if there are traitors within your own walls. Your task is to hunt them down and eliminate them without mercy. This brings us to the second and third tactics, the twin pillars upon which your psychological citadel will be built. You must first learn to govern your internal state with an iron hand before you can hope to project power outward. The second tactic is the most difficult, for it requires you to declare war not on an external enemy, but on the parts of yourself you have been taught to coddle. Tactic 2. You must institute a personal economy of cruelty. When Machiavelli wrote of cruelty, he distinguished between that which is well used and that which is ill-used. Ill-used cruelty is sporadic, hesitant, and prolonged, breeding hatred and instability. But well-used cruelty is a different beast entirely. It is swift, decisive, surgical, and applied all at once to secure a final and lasting peace. A ruler who must punish his enemies does so once, with overwhelming force, so that he never has to do so again. This principle must become the governing law of your own mind. Your internal weaknesses, your sentimentality, your hesitation, your self-pity, your addiction to comfort, your fear of confrontation, are not harmless quirks of character. They are seditious conspirators within your own principality. They are the corrupt nobles who whisper poison in your ear, urging you to take the easy path, to delay the necessary conflict, to accept a lesser peace that guarantees a future war. They are plotting your overthrow from within the chambers of your own consciousness. To be psychologically invincible, you must treat these internal traitors with well-used cruelty. When you identify a weakness, you do not negotiate with it. You do not reason with it. You do not promise to deal with it tomorrow, you execute it. Hesitation is the rust of the will. When you know a difficult conversation must be had, the cruelty of doing it now is far lesser than the prolonged agony of delaying it. You make the call. You send the message. You face the conflict head-on. The pain is sharp, but finite. The alternative is a dull, chronic ache of anxiety that poisons everything. Procrastination is the indulgence of a mind that does not respect its own commands. The well-used cruelty is to force yourself into the discomfort of the task immediately, to murder the desire for ease before it can take root. Self-pity is the most insidious traitor of all, a sweet poison that convinces you that your suffering makes you special. The anatomist knows that suffering is merely data. You must be cruel to your own narrative of victimhood. You must starve it of attention, dissect its self-serving logic, and replace it with a brutal accounting of your own agency and responsibility. This is not self-hatred. It is the highest form of self-preservation. It is the act of a sovereign ruler securing his state. The surgeon who hesitates to cut deep to remove a cancer because he fears causing pain is not kind. He is a killer. His sentimentality is a death sentence. You must become the surgeon of your own mind. You must identify the malignancies of weakness and excise them with a single clean, unhesitating cut. This internal ruthlessness is the forge of resilience. Every weakness you execute is a stone laid in the foundation of your inner fortress. Once the internal state is secured and its traitors eliminated, you must manage its resources with the same cold pragmatism. This leads to the third tactic, a principle of external operation that protects your newly fortified psyche. Tactic 3. You must master the art of emotional parsimony. Machiavelli observed that a prince who is seen as liberal or overly generous will quickly exhaust his treasury. To maintain his reputation, he will be forced to burden his people with taxes, and in the end his initial generosity will earn him nothing but their contempt. He is loved for a day and hated for a lifetime. This is a perfect metaphor for the management of your most precious assets: your time, your focus, your trust, and your emotional energy. The psychologically vulnerable individual is an emotional spendthrift. They are liberal with their validation, granting it to anyone who asks. They are generous with their trust, offering it before it has been earned. They invest their energy in fruitless arguments, in draining relationships, in causes that offer no strategic return. They deplete their own treasury in a desperate bid to be liked, to be seen as a good person. And just like the liberal prince, they end up emotionally bankrupt, resentful, and despised for the very neediness their generosity created. To be invincible is to be parsimonious. Parsimony is not the same as being a miser. The miser hoards his gold for no reason. The parsimonious prince understands that his treasury is a strategic weapon. Every expenditure must serve a purpose. You must begin to treat your emotional and psychological resources as the finite, precious capital they are. Your focus is a spotlight. Do not waste it illuminating fools. Your trust is a treaty. Do not sign it with unreliable allies. Your loyalty is a crown. Do not bestow it upon the unworthy. Your emotional energy is your strategic reserve, the fund you draw upon to withstand sieges and to launch your own campaigns. To be parsimonious means your default answer to requests for your energy is no. It means you listen more than you speak. It means you offer praise rarely, so that when you do, it has the weight of gold. It means you are slow to grant confidence, forcing others to prove their value over time. This creates an aura of immense gravity. People will begin to compete for your attention, for your approval, for your trust, because they perceive it as a scarce and valuable commodity. The person who agrees with everyone is respected by no one. The person whose support is hard-won becomes a prize. You are no longer a public well from which anyone can drink. You are a sealed vault, and access is a privilege. This practice is not about alienation, it is about valuation. By conserving your resources, you not only protect yourself from being drained by the endless demands of the world, but you also dramatically increase the impact of your actions when you finally choose to commit them. Your carefully chosen alliances are stronger. Your rare words of encouragement are more powerful, and your decisive actions carry the full, undiluted force of your will. You have purged the traitors within, and now you guard the gates from without. Your mind is no longer a republic in chaos. It is an efficient, well-managed state, solvent and secure. It is a fortress, ready for a siege, and a treasury, ready for a war. The foundations have been laid. The traitors within your own mind have been silenced. and the gates of your psychological fortress are now guarded by the cold sentinels of parsimony and discipline. You have become a fortified state, solvent and secure. But a fortress, no matter how strong, is a sterile and meaningless thing if it has no sovereign. A treasury, no matter how full, is worthless without a will to deploy it. Security is the foundation of power, not its purpose. The ultimate aim is not to hide from the world in a state of perfect defense, but to impose your will upon it. To do this, you must step out of the role of the architect and into the role of the monarch. You must ascend the throne of your own consciousness and learn to wield the scepter of decision. The passive strength of resilience must now be forged into the active weapon of a sovereign will. This requires you to engage in a new kind of war, a war not on your weaknesses but on the very concept of safety. This brings us to the fourth and perhaps most transformative of the 5 tactics. Tactic 4. You must declare an unrelenting war on neutrality. In the world of power, there is no more dangerous territory than the middle ground. Machiavelli observed that a prince who remains neutral between 2 warring powers will inevitably be undone. If his ally wins, he is viewed with contempt, a fair-weather friend who offered no aid in the hour of need. If his enemy wins, he is seen as easy prey, an isolated state with no one to defend it. Neutrality, he concluded, is a losing proposition disguised as a safe one. This same principle governs the landscape of your own mind. Psychological neutrality is the modern disease of indecision. It is the desire to keep all options open, to avoid taking a stand, to wait for more information, to seek consensus before acting. It is the quiet hope that if you refuse to make a choice, the world will make a favorable one for you. This is the most debilitating of all self-deceptions. Indecision is not a state of careful deliberation. It is a state of psychological paralysis. The mind that cannot commit is a ship without a rudder, at the mercy of every wind and current. It cedes control of its destiny to external forces. This war on neutrality must be total. You must cultivate a fierce intolerance for your own ambiguity. When faced with a choice, you must understand that the act of choosing is itself more important than the choice you make. A wrong decision, acted upon with conviction, provides experience, data, and a new strategic position from which to maneuver. An agony of indecision provides nothing but the erosion of your will and the squandering of your most precious resource, time. The world belongs to those who act. You must force your own hand. Set deadlines for your decisions and treat them as sacred. Learn to trust your intuition, not as a magical force, but as the subconscious processing of all your past experiences and observations. When the path is unclear, choose the one that involves action over inaction. It is better to march into a potential ambush, alert and armed, than to be starved out while waiting for a guaranteed safe passage that will never come. This internal campaign is brutal. It requires you to kill the hope of a perfect outcome. It demands that you embrace the responsibility for your choices, good or bad. But from this war emerges the rarest of all human qualities, a truly sovereign will. You cease to be a reactor to the world's events and become an initiator of them. Your life stops being a series of accidents and starts becoming a campaign of intent. Once this internal war is won and the habit of decisive action is forged in the fires of your will, you must then project this new reality onto the world. This leads to the final piece of this section's architecture, mastering the theater of certainty. Machiavelli's most enduring insight is that men are governed by appearances. Everyone sees what you appear to be, he wrote. Few experience what you really are. The world does not have access to your internal monologue, your doubts or your fears. It has access only to your performance. And in the theater of power, the most commanding performance is one of absolute certainty. The sovereign will that you have forged internally must be clothed in the external robes of unshakable resolve. Your actions must become a form of communication more potent than any words. When you speak, you do so with an economy of language that suggests your decision is already made. When you move, you do so with a deliberation that implies purpose in every step. When you listen, you do so with an unnerving stillness that communicates you are not seeking guidance, but merely gathering the last pieces of intelligence before executing a preordained plan. This is not a performance of arrogance or of boisterousness. True certainty is quiet, it is calm. It is the unshakable confidence of the mountain, which does not need to announce its presence. This facade of certainty becomes a powerful strategic tool. It has a profound psychological effect on those around you. Your rivals, who are accustomed to probing for weakness and hesitation, will find no cracks in your armor. They will mistake your decisiveness for superior knowledge, and their own confidence will begin to erode. Your allies and subordinates who crave direction in a world of chaos will see you as a source of stability and strength. They will flock to your banner, not out of love, but out of a deep instinctual human need for leadership. Your cultivated appearance of certainty becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By acting as if you are in complete control, you compel the world to arrange itself around your will. You project a reality so compelling that others begin to accept it as their own. Doubt may be a private advisor, but it must never be allowed to sit on the public throne. You consult it in the darkness of your own council chambers, but in the light of day you must rule alone, with a quiet and terrifying clarity. Through this fusion of internal decisiveness and external performance, you cease to be merely a person. You become a force of nature, a center of gravity around which others must orient themselves. You have conquered the chaos within, and now you are ready to impose your order on the chaos without. You have learned the anatomy of human nature, fortified your mind, and forged a will of sovereign steel. Now, before we unveil the final act of coronation that solidifies this power, ensure you are subscribed. The ultimate wisdom is reserved for those who have committed to the journey, for the final tactic is not merely a strategy, it is the creation of a new and permanent order. You stand at the precipice of a final transformation. The architect, the surgeon, and the monarch have all played their parts. What remains is the masterstroke, the moment when all these roles converge into a single unified act of power that makes your invincibility not a practice, but a permanent feature of your being. This is the culmination of all prior tactics, the final move that consolidates your gains and establishes a lasting legacy of strength. It is the psychological equivalent of a prince seizing a city, not to plunder it, but to fortify it, govern it, and make it irrevocably his own. This ultimate maneuver, the fifth and final cold-blooded tactic, is the most profound. Tactic 5. You must learn to rely only on your own arms and your own virtue. Machiavelli held a special contempt for princes who relied on mercenaries or the forces of others to secure their states. He saw them as fundamentally weak, their power resting on a foundation of sand. Mercenaries are disloyal, undisciplined, and driven by money, not by allegiance. They will desert you the moment a higher bidder emerges or the moment the battle turns against you. Power that is borrowed is not power at all. It is a debt, and the interest is your own autonomy. This principle is the key to absolute psychological invincibility. You must conduct a ruthless audit of your own mind and identify all the mercenary forces upon which you rely for your sense of self, your stability, and your validation. These are the external sources of strength you have rented, but do not own. The most common of these is the opinion of others. If you depend on praise to feel confident, you have hired a mercenary army of admirers. If you are crippled by criticism, you have given your enemies veto power over your own emotional state. Your sense of worth is not your own. It is on loan from the fickle court of public opinion. To rely on your own arms means you must systematically fire these mercenaries. You must sever the dependencies that make you vulnerable. This is the great severance. You must consciously abdicate your need for external approval until the silence of your own counsel is the only voice that matters. You must view flattery not as a reward, but as a strategic communication from another party. Information to be analyzed, not validation to be absorbed. You must see insult not as an attack, but as a clumsy reconnaissance mission sent by a rival to gauge your defenses. This requires you to build your own native army, forces loyal only to you because they are a part of you. What are these arms? They are your discipline, forged in the fires of your war against neutrality. They are your judgment, sharpened by your anatomical study of human nature. They are your resilience, built by the practice of emotional parsimony. They are your self-respect, earned through the well-used cruelty you applied to your own weaknesses. These are not borrowed soldiers. They are the veteran legions of your own soul, loyal to the death because their existence is synonymous with your own. When your stability comes from your unshakable discipline, rather than the fleeting praise of a superior, you cannot be psychologically disarmed. When your confidence is rooted in a sober assessment of your own capabilities, not the fickle adoration of a crowd, you cannot be dethroned by popular opinion. This is the true meaning of self-sufficiency. It is the establishment of a mind that generates its own power, its own heat, its own light. With this internal army in place, the final act is the consolidation of your psychological state. The true masterstroke is not a single dramatic event, but the establishment of a new and lasting order within your own mind. It is the moment you stop thinking of these tactics as isolated strategies and begin to see them as the constitution of your inner world. You do not just use these principles, you become them. Your mind ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a kingdom, a governed, structured, and sovereign entity. The anatomist becomes your intelligence agency, constantly gathering data on the world without emotional entanglement. The practice of cruelty becomes your ministry of internal security, ensuring no sedition can take root. Parsimony becomes your treasury, managing your resources for maximum strategic effect. The will forged in the war against neutrality becomes your executive branch, the sovereign who makes the final decision. And your reliance on your own arms becomes your Department of Defense, a standing army that guarantees your independence. This is the creation of an unbreachable psychological order. Fortune, the unpredictable chaos of the external world, may batter the walls of your kingdom with storms of misfortune, betrayal, and adversity. But a state with a strong constitution, a loyal army, and a wise sovereign does not collapse in a crisis. It endures. It adapts. It may even find opportunity in the chaos. And so, we arrive at the final philosophical truth. Psychological invincibility is not a destination, it is a system of governance. It is not an absence of feeling, but a mastery over it. It is not about being untouched by the world, but about being fundamentally unconquered by it. You have ceased to be a passive citizen in the chaotic republic of your own emotions. You have staged a coup, seized power, and crowned yourself sovereign over the only territory you will ever truly command, the landscape of your own mind. This is the ultimate power, a form of freedom so absolute that few will ever dare to seek it. It is the ability to look upon the chaos of the world, with all its treachery and all its fortune, and to meet it not with fear, not with hope, but with the calm, cold gaze of a king surveying his own unbreachable domain. You are no longer a piece on the board, subject to the hands of others. You are the player. You are the hand. You are the architect of your fate. You have built a throne inside your own skull, and from it, you will rule your world.